You are now listening to Good, Bad, or Bullshit.
Hello, good listeners, and welcome to the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast, the show where we have been providing quality reviews on random topics since 2013. 2 whole years now. Well, not whole years, but it's been since 2013. Another botched intro. And without further ado, I will introduce to you my 2 co-hosts, my bosom buddies, my friends, my compadres. I'm going to start with friend number 1. I rank my friends, and he is number 1. And that, of course, means you guys are in suspense now. You want to know who number
on the edge of my seat.
Good.
All right,
go.
It's Michael Hodges. Michael Hodges is number
Winner.
1. And of course, that leaves my friend number 7 and co-host number 2, Bo Schwartz.
You know I write your paychecks, even though they contain $0.
They're all IOUs.
Hello, GBB listeners. Hello, Michael, and hello, Crofton. It's Radio Voice Bo saying, everyone within the sound of my voice, greetings.
You're really working the radio voice, and I'm always pointing it out.
Yeah.
Hello, listeners and fellow podcast hosts.
People of Earth.
Why do people on the radio have to talk like that? It drives me insane.
I think it's just that I have a fabulous personality, and I don't have a lot of outlets for it to just, to let it out. So this show is like,
Fabulous personality.
yeah.
You single ladies. I think it has to do with the idea of you can't see somebody smile like you can see them on TV. So the idea is that you're trying to like translate that smile through the tone of your voice. I think that's what the radio hosts are doing.
Man. They fail at that. They manage to translate usually obnoxiousness very well.
But you feel that they're probably guffawing about it in an obnoxious way with a smile on their face.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like they're usually trying to make you laugh and mostly failing. I'm thinking like morning radio, it's just usually not worth listening.
Yeah, you're listening to Morning Good, Bad, or Bullshit Radio with Bo, Michael, and the dumb intern. Dumb intern, you're dumb! I don't have a sound
And then
effect.
you have to like have a horn honking or something.
I don't have any of those sounds.
Have you guys, and this is an old Simpsons episode, but that Simpsons episode where Bart wins a radio contest where he can either win money or an elephant, and he claims the elephant, and they just totally assumed that he was going to take the money, and they're talking to the 2 DJs and saying, you need to get this kid an elephant or we're going to replace you with DJ Tron 3000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it pans across and you see this giant machine and they start hitting the buttons and it does exactly their entire job.
I like how one of the things it said was like, those clowns in Congress have sure done it again. And then the guy's like, how does it keep up on the news like that?
It's true. All right. That was some delightful banter, boys. Now, without further ado, let's start the random topic generator.
All right, Mike, get her going.
That was actually real talk.
Random Delightful Boys was the name of my choir that I was a part of in high school.
Don't sound too motivated.
That's not a good radio voice.
No, oh yeah. The topic today is veganism and vegetarianism.
Wha-bam! All right.
Would vegans and vegetarians reject being lumped into the same category?
Well, we're lumping them in because if you start talking about vegetarian, I mean, why would you?
They're people.
I feel like it's lumpable. Let's just say people who refuse to eat.
There are 2 kinds of people. There are people that eat food, and there are people that take the categories of non-poisonous foods and separate them into other categories not to eat, and only eat certain sections of food.
Well, look, okay, everyone does that to some extent. I can think of Crofton steers, for example, will not eat anything that came from the sea, pretty much.
It's
And
just because it tastes like ass.
yeah, right, exactly. So people have different reasons. They've
Wow.
taken, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, likely it's a sort of protest about, it's either related to the treatment of animals and not wanting to see them, treated however they are for slaughter and consumption, or the environmental impacts that type of farming, industrialized animal farming has on the world, which is much higher than growing crops. So
I
I
bet
think
you
those are like two of the reasons that people are driven into veganism.
another reason is probably similar to, like, there's a lot of foods that I don't eat based on, and I know that it's not 100% based on taste. Sometimes it's based on like mental baggage that I can't unload. Like if you went and presented me with, say, raw sushi or whatever, it could be the most delicious thing in the world, and I think my brain would have a real hard time getting around the raw fish type thing wrapped in seaweed. Like it just would be hard. Same like with escargot and all that. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with them. It's just that, like, for whatever reason, I think that they're gross, and therefore eating them, when I know what they are, makes me, it almost activates sort of my gag reflex. I guarantee you that there's people that see all meat that way, and it's not necessarily, they're not making necessarily a moral choice or anything like that. They're just like, they literally try to eat meat and then they're like, oh, they're repulsed, And I think that's just, they probably find it gross writ large, and I could understand why they would.
That's certainly true for meat, less so, I think, for things like eggs and dairy products.
Well, eggs are like chicken fetuses. That's
What?
totally eggs.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think of how many things eggs are in, like if you don't like, say, you're talking about, if someone eats meat and it's like, ugh, meat is disgusting, I can't eat meat. But then you might give that same person cake, and they might be like, oh yeah, I love cake, and it's got milk and eggs in it. You know what I mean? It doesn't. It's unlikely to trigger that same kind of disgust of the palate, which you describe for like seafood. Something like milk. I think I'm just sort of differentiating. I think for vegetarianism, you're very right. For someone to go vegan because of the flavors of things like dairy, I would be surprised if someone had that sensitive a palate.
They might
Like
do it for medical reasons, though, right?
Yeah.
Vegetarianism. I mean,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of non-isms that are just, you can't eat this because of your body not reacting well to it. But there are people who avoid meats due to health concerns.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people would argue that meat is not a non-essential part of the diet, can be replaced with other things, and therefore maybe other more healthier options. Maybe they'd make that argument. I'm not sure.
Here's one reason to become a vegetarian: to fit in and be cool in high school, which is something I did.
You were vegetarian?
Yeah, for, I don't know, a pretty short amount of time.
Wow.
Maybe 3 months. And and my
count.
mom kind of put a stop to it because she said I was turning yellow, because my idea of vegetarianism was to eat chocolate bars. It's like, it's not me. And yeah, I was kind of just doing it to fit in, and I really missed the meat. And I tried some of those fake hot dogs, and this was in the early days of like fake meats. I don't know what they taste like now, but they were pretty bad back then. So that's a reason you could do it too, but I suggest you really think deeply about why you want to do something like that and then do it.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of people. A good friend of mine from high school, Cody. You know Cody Crofton. He was also our roommate in college.
I recall that.
Cody was a vegetarian for quite a few years, and I think also in high school and that. But I remember when he ate a hamburger once, and he was just like, "Man, meat's so good," and then he was all hardcore back on meat. A lot of people go through periods.
180.
Well, I mean,
And hamburger, no less. Like,
well, it's gonna be something you crave. My wife was a vegetarian for like, I think she said 7 years or something.
wow.
Yeah, she was fairly committed. I think the reason she actually started eating meat again was because of is it anemia, where you're iron deficiency?
That's an iron deficiency, I believe.
Yeah, and it really, red meat is a very easy way to get. You can get iron in other things, of course, like spinach and many other sources. Cream of wheat, which is disgusting if you've ever had it. In any case, I think that's what she got back on. And she does not eat meat much. Oftentimes, we won't eat meat for, I don't know, most of a week. Though, and I'm okay. Like I could probably live as a vegetarian. I just would prefer not to. I enjoy meat quite a bit.
Yeah, well, I think like one of the most resonating things to do with vegetarianism that's happened to me was actually at a very young age. My sister's kind of the same as you. I think she still doesn't like seafood. I haven't asked her about it in a while, but from an early age, we watched a documentary about overfishing, and killing dolphins, and just the sheer disgustingness of the way fishing kind of works. They kill and throw away a lot of the fish that they catch in these huge nets. And she decided from a very, very early age to take a stand against that kind of thing and not, give them their dollars and not endorse this kind of product.
Well, I think there's a lot of people like that who watch a documentary or a television show or something. They see there's a lot now about how these giant Mega Millions farms cram the pigs so tight, and then they're crammed so tight together they just form sausages in pens. But I think that's somewhat of a legit reason to be turned off of something, especially if it gives you mental baggage that you take with you whenever you're having the food. But I do think that it's like, if you like something and you're not eating it because you don't like the way it's produced, that might not be the most, like, there's probably a way you can get around without going full vegetarian. You could probably find meats that are produced in a more ethically fashion. Same with seafood, but I understand probably she was using that as an excuse because seafood tastes like ass. She's like,
taste like ass.
I'm gonna use this sort of ethical thing so that people. That's cool too.
That's probably not why she's doing that, because I like seafood and but I tend to avoid shrimp because it particularly has some bad fishing. I like shrimp, but I usually will be like, oh, I shouldn't eat shrimp because of the way it destroys the sea floor, and I don't eat cod because I feel like that's an ethical issue around the depletion of cod. But it's probably like that for most types of seafood. I do think you're right, Crofton, in that if you want to avoid sort of some of the things around eating meat, you can. Recently, near where I live, a Whole Foods opened. And if you guys don't know what a Whole Foods is, it's a yuppie grocery store.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yes, it is.
It's a more boutique style place where they sell specialized goods and services.
Well, no, it's honestly
Sure.
it's just a grocery store. It has like better design maybe than other grocery stores you go in, and it kind of like looks a little nicer, and it has a lot of a fair amount of organic, and I think they make an effort to purchase local or to stock local stuff. So that's all fine and good. The one thing, and of course it's way more expensive than most of the grocery stores.
That's the trick.
Yeah, the one thing that I really do like about it, and which I will pay the shot for, is the way they do their meat. So I do have kind of an ethical issue with, I like meat, and I would like to just stop eating it because of the way factory farms treat animals. I really don't like it, and I don't even need to watch those videos. I see that. In fact, they disturb me, which is what they're supposed to do when you watch these videos. These animals being treated horribly, but it's more like I already know that to be the case, and I already feel kind of bad about it. So what Whole Foods does is they have. And I'm in no way endorsing foods, I'm just going to point out. But what they do have is they have like a grading system of meat. So they have like 1 to 5 and then like 5 plus or something. And they all have different things around them. So like if you buy meat that's rated like 5 plus at their store, it means that like this animal has been, like, say it's beef, for instance. It's different for each animal, but say it's beef. It's like grass-fed, lived its whole life on one farm. It's out free range and a bunch of other things. Oh yeah,
had lots of friends, was well adjusted in high school.
It's just like the Portlandia skit about
that's exactly what I'm thinking.
But the thing is, like, because the way I figured is animals are going to die anyways. I'm going to die at some point. I'm like, if someone wanted to make my corpse into like dog food or something, I'd probably be okay with that.
This is a living will.
Well, after I'm dead, I'm like, maybe some use come of my beautiful corpse. So the way I figured is animals are going to die anyways. If they could leave a half decent animal life before they die, I'm like, all right, I'm much like I would much rather slaughter a cow myself if I knew like, okay, this cow has like had a pretty good life of roaming around with other cows, whatever, and then it's got to a certain age, and then you kill it. I'm like, I can live with that, and I always have to put it to myself like, could I slaughter that animal myself? And it's always difficult to think about slaughtering an animal, and I feel like, okay, if I want to eat meat, I have to be like, yeah, I guess I could, under certain circumstances, slaughter an animal. But I think if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, it's particularly a vegan, where for you it's about like subjugation of animals. I think it really is the ethical thing of you cannot stand the idea that we have animals that are just bred only for our pleasure, whether to be eaten or to be made into products. Because if you're a vegan, you don't wear leather either, or fur and things like that.
And that like ethical stand is one that like I do think about, because there has like humanity in the natural kingdom of Earth, or I don't know, biosphere, whatever you call this thing.
This is going off the rails.
No. All right.
The kingdom of the Lord.
If we consider ourselves animals and we're at the top of the food chain, we're the ultimate predator. It sort of implies that there's a certain point where eating animals would be okay if our ability to prey on animals was balanced. And so the idea that you might become vegan or go vegetarian due to ethical reasons sort of says that relationship with the rest of the animal world as predators is out of balance, because we can murder them by the millions per day. And so it kind of leads me to like think like, so what are scenarios where you would eat meat, because it's not for health reasons, it's for political, social, cultural reasons that you're doing this. At what point, like people who hunt for sport, with guns, it's clearly very easy still. Is that crossing the line? Would it be okay to go with a knife and manually hunt down an animal, kill it, and eat it, because that was a fair form as you as a human animal going after a prey? Or is it with your bare hands? Like at what point is it okay? Because the fact that we are carnivorous, right? Like that's not something we learned that we're not
we're omnivores.
Yeah, I know, but like that's what I'm saying is that it's not like we eat meat, but we're not supposed to. But somehow, because we've mastered a lot of domains in the natural world, that we somehow eat meat just purely for luxury. Eating meat is a part of being a human. So I just wonder, because they might say, "Oh, I don't eat meat," but it might be more correct. I'm always thinking about this, that it would be correct to eat meat under these certain circumstances. If I caught that rabbit with my bare hands and hit it against something and knocked it out and killed it like normal natural animals should, then it's okay to eat that meat. Like I wonder about that. Do you guys have some opinions on?
Well, I know someone like that. My friend Janice is a vegetarian, and I think she'll limit her meat consumption to. Well, it's funny. It sounds like whenever people are vegetarians and say, "But I eat this kind of meat." So she eats fish, but only fish that she has caught. But other than that,
with a fishing rod or with her hands?
I think with a fishing rod. No, she's not like gets
spear.
a big industrial ship and goes and combs the ocean.
No, I know, but a fishing rod is kind of like human ingenuity as well.
No,
they're crazy technical,
Yeah, and I don't know that she would kill a deer or something else. I think maybe she limits it to fish, and I think she uses a rod when she does it. But and I know other people like that too, where it's kind of like if you catch it yourself. I think the idea it's of killing an animal is tough. Like if if it pulls your empathy bone, and presumably there's a bone somewhere in your brain that's where your empathy lives, which whenever I see an animal die, and I feel like, oh, I'm sad for the animal, because I feel like I'm pretty empathetic that way.
Anthropomorphizing the animal, maybe.
Well, yeah. Oh, well, the thing is, I think it's look, I don't want to get into this subtopic. I think it's pretty clear animals experience pain and have some degree of consciousness. We could talk about that some other time.
I agree with that.
But in any case, you just feel sad for that animal because it's dying, and it's okay. But I'm at peace with being. You can feel sad for it, and it might still need to die for food or whatever else. But if that empathy really just tugs at your heartstrings, you can't get past it. Then I think that it's probably for some people, it's probably under no circumstances they would say it's not necessary. I could grow food, I could collect food. There's no reason for me to ever eat an animal. But I do think you're right in that there's some people that have that kind of threshold of like, if I caught it myself kind of thing.
Yeah, like I don't have a strong opinion. I just think about it a lot, and I wonder about people's answers. Crofton, anything to add to that?
Well, earlier this month, New Zealand was the first country in the world to pass like an animal welfare bill, saying that animals, like humans, are sentient beings, which is having all sorts of repercussions that they're going to have to deal with in terms of like what is considered and what is not considered animal cruelty. It has all sorts of ethical considerations and stuff as well. Reason I bring it up is because when Mike mentioned killing animals, and he gave the example of Janice fishing, and like I could fish too. I have no problem with catching a fish. It would taste horrible, but I could catch it without any sort of moral or ethical concerns. But when it comes to killing like wildlife around, maybe I couldn't. We talked about this in the hunting episode a bit, and I said how I've never had any desire or drive to kill a living animal. I still stand by that, and I feel like it's kind of it does seem hypocritical in that I love eating meat and I have no qualms about eating sort of meat that's being processed through the systems that we have in place. But if then told, Crofton, the only meat you can have now is what you kill with your bare hands or this machine gun.
Machine gun. Holy shit.
I would probably be like, well, I guess I'm vegetarian now because I don't want to go around killing animals. But I don't mind eating them through the process that we have in place, and maybe that makes me a hypocrite. But really just the idea of doing the murder. Maybe I kill a chicken. I could break a chicken's neck probably, but I don't think I could go around like slaughtering cows and stuff. I think it would be.
It's funny that you bring it up because I think I think it's not to kind of. It does make you a hypocrite, I think.
Well, whatever, it could.
No, but you're right to kind of admit it because I think the people who feel so strongly about it, that they become vegans or vegetarians are very aware of the fact that it's a hidden process, right? That you just see this. You go to the store, meat tastes good, it's packaged there. It's like disembodied meat. You don't have to think about the murder. You frame it like that. It sounds like if every time you went to the grocery store, you had to watch some man in a back room like butcher a live animal while it hollered, you might be like, "Oh God!" You'd have a real hard time doing it. And I think that is worth considering. Like now, I eat meat, and I feel like I've had to tell myself like, look, if it came down to it, I'd kill the animal because I refuse to be a hypocrite, and as much as I know that would be difficult, I feel like I could do it, and I think you have to be sort of willing to if you're going to eat meat to some extent. Like,
I don't think so.
Say like I love meat, I would never kill an animal. I'd never hurt a hair on an animal's head. But give me its corpse, please.
I think in all civilizations there has been a leisure class that has enjoyed not having to even witness what it takes to sustain their lifestyle. And I think we live in a time where the leisure class is as big or as populous as it's ever been. And, I kind of squirm at the idea of doing this stuff myself. And, I'm sort of here comfortable in my white North American privileged chair on the internet all day ordering stuff online, not having to see what all how the sausage gets made, boys.
Buying tons of pepperettes every day.
I eat tons of pepperettes, and I can only assume they just put the animals in a blender and the pepperettes come out.
I agree. Like, I'm the leisure class, whatever. I totally and I understand, Mike. You tell yourself like I have to be willing to do this, otherwise I'm a hypocrite. Whatever. Like I recognize that I would not do it if I had to go in and kill the animal myself or whatever. I probably would start being a vegetarian, and it's the processes that make it easier. I was raised in such a way that like in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, it was really like meat and potatoes was the meal. Like the men would come back from work, the housewives or whatever would make.
You were raised in the 1940s.
No,
But you're
no,
descended
but
from pioneers. You are.
my mom definitely was, and then she, coming from New Zealand, which is prepared meals for us growing up that were often of similar, a meat meal like pork chops, lamb chops, whatever, potatoes, and a vegetable side. So like, from a very young age, this is the norm. This is the norm for me. And you're introduced to meat as a child, like we're introducing our baby daughter to meat right now. You're introduced to meat as a child, and so you acquire the taste for it, the interest in it, and all that sort of thing. Meanwhile, we're reading books to the same child being like, this is what a chicken looks like, isn't it cute? This is what a cow looks like, whatever, isn't it cute? And meanwhile, we're like, here, this is how you eat a cow.
Turning her into a hypocrite cross. See, I slaughtered a pig in front of Ivan the other day because I felt like he cried a lot.
I can't tell if you're serious.
This is bacon, Ivan.
No, I didn't do that.
But all I'm saying is that you learn to like meat as a kid well before you're faced with any of these ethical choices. So then that's how you end up with people like me, the leisure class, because we're like, oh, okay, meat is awesome, and then it's like, well, if you want to keep eating it, now you got to kill it yourself. That's when the decisions come in. But luckily, I don't have to make that decision, so I just keep eating it.
Privilege. Isn't it right?
No, and you're very right about that. We get so used to it, it's hard to, and it's never been part of our upbringing, whereas I think it used to be. I think that you used to, as a child, see someone in your family slaughter a goat or slaughter a pig or something occasionally when it was time to do that, and it was a little bit more normal. You realize like, oh well, this is how the world works. But to some extent, I think it does a disservice to people like us in the privileged class who are just like, it's served up. We should be aware that there's that element to it, and I respect back, getting back to against vegetarians and vegans. I do respect the decision that they have made, because it's kind of hard to be a vegetarian or especially a vegan. I think getting easier, especially being.
I respect the decision. I do respect the strength that it takes to make a decision like that. I don't necessarily respect the decision depending on why it was made. And definitely switching from vegetarian to full vegan, like I can admit that that's hard, but I do find a lot of like to move away wholesale from all animal generated foods like eggs, cheese, milk, all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I just find like it's excessive when it's like. It could be seen as working with nature, and that there are, like you mentioned, the Whole Foods example, but there are other alternatives to acquire that food in a sort of in a more fair and equitable environment, as opposed to just enslaving animals that are doing our bidding. It's sort of like working together with nature to a certain extent.
Well, I remember I went to school with this guy who was a vegetarian back. This was like a 2001 sort of time frame. And I remember asking him well, because he was, and I was, I think, less sympathetic to the vegetarians at the time. And he was this hardcore vegetarian. And I'm like, well, what would you do if tomorrow, like, everyone in the world became a vegetarian? There's like millions of cows. Like, what would we do with them? Like, because right now they're in line to be like butchered and killed. So now it's like, tomorrow everyone's a vegetarian. What do you do with all these cows? And he was like, well, I don't know. And because you got to do something with them. They can't live in the wild. Like a lot of these animals are not. They can't really feed them. Well, I guess a cow could kind of live, but we would say, screw you, cow. We want that land for sweet soybeans to make fake meat with now. So like it's just it's so ingrained that you have to live essentially against the culture or the counterculture way just to take that ethical stance. It's the ethicalness of it that I respect. The fact that you are like, I don't like seeing animals treated this way. I'm not going to eat them, not participate. I feel like there's a lot to be said for that.
I do find though that like vegetarians, and this isn't vegetarians, but it's one of those things where like, and it's not fair to label them with a broad brush, but I have met some that are extremely sort of pointed about their views. And Paul McCartney, when he was a guest star on The Simpsons, him and his late wife were really big vegetarians, and he only agreed. He guest starred on the episode where Lisa became a vegetarian, and he only agreed to guest star if Lisa remained a vegetarian for the rest of the series, which, as we know, has gone on way too long. And so, but like to make sort of demands like that and say like I want to, it's sort of like imposing a belief system in the same way as religion is imposed, and I don't like that as much. I've met some very pushy vegetarians that decry the evils of meat eating, if you will.
But it's like that for anything. If you perceive something to be an evil thing, you need to fight for it, and other people don't. They don't perceive the injustice, and you could find all kinds of examples of things that you would be on the other side of the fence, certainly. And so even if you don't agree with them on the particular injustices of this. Of the issue of eating meat, I think we can always appreciate the fact that they have taken this stance, and it's not necessarily an easy one to take, because also the nuts and bolts of being vegetarian or vegan are that you have to try hard to get your proper balanced nutrition. Like I think for proteins and stuff, Andrew's always telling me you need to eat like you can't just eat. Well, you eat a lot of beans, but I think you got to eat beans with like something else, like corn,
peas,
or something,
or rice,
peanut butter.
Well, no, but
you gotta blend them. I remember hearing. I don't remember exactly what it is either, but to make a whole protein, you have to combine different foods, different sources.
You can read this recipe and many more in our new Good, Bad, or Bullshit book. 3 morons making vegetarian recipes.
Like, I think recipe would start by like, I think you're supposed to get like beans or something.
There should be something to replace the meat.
And then they always just turns into a disgusting gray mush.
Oh man, I've made that before.
I wonder about with vegetarians and Bo, you dabbled in it way too briefly and just replaced it with chocolate bars, so you're probably not the best person to ask. Maybe Mike would know. But fake meat that Bo talked about, like the idea of like if you're vegetarian, you move to a whole different way of doing things. Like meat is no longer removed from no longer included in your diet. But then you see like a lot of these like soy burgers or tofu replaces a lot, but some are made to be like the texture and consistency is made to be like meat. Is that like if somebody is going down that avenue, is that essentially somebody who really doesn't want to be a vegetarian, who's just like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole? Like I can't have meat, so I'm going to have like. It's like how I have diet pop, but really,
it's like I can't have a hamburger, pop. So I'll have a fake hamburger, and I'll still indulge my carnal desires for blood and flesh.
Well, I think you guys are kind of mixing things there, because if you think about like,
I'm not mixing anything up. I'm asking a question.
Oh well, okay. Let me give you my take on that, because if you because look, you can eat a whole vegetable, right? So you can eat some beans or some broccoli, whatever. Mm-hmm. You can eat a slab of meat that's just a steak. It's a cut of meat straight from the animal. You fry it up. But if you eat something like a hot dog, like what is that? That is like a bunch of animal parts ground up into a mash with fillers put in and a ton of spices put in and other things put into it, and then made into some weird shape that comes nowhere from an animal. Mm-hmm. And then you eat that and you're like, yum, meat.
Yeah, my dad likes to call that it came from a can of mashed assholes.
Well, pretty much.
Like
But
you're
here's
eating the
thing
assholes
is,
of the animals all blended
let me
up.
finish my point, Bo, before we go on about your dad's asshole rant. So then, if you were to take a bunch of vegetables, mash them up, add some spices and some, non-animal filler, and put it into a shape also like a hot dog, I feel like that's not like you're not trying to satiate that need for meat. I mean, maybe you are because you gave up meat, but it's just like, why not? Like a lot of those meat things are just meat that has been put into some form that no longer looks anything like a piece of meat, and we like the taste of it. So if you can get vegetables to get into that shape and it also tastes good, well, what's wrong with that? Because some of those like tofu dogs or soy dog are like actually pretty decent. They don't taste bad. They taste good.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't taste, good or good-ish, but like my friend Gab's a vegetarian. We were at the Subway the other day, and Subway has like a veggie sub, which is just vegetables, but then it has like a veggie patty sub, which is like some sort of vegetable based thing that they put in the sub or whatever, and in my mind it's a better deal because it's cheaper and you get something, you get like some whatever that patty is, I don't know, but it just seems kind of like a substitute. It feels like it's substituting for deli meats because you can't have deli meats,
It's funny because like what's a deli meat? Like you say it in this way of like it's a slab of something. Have you looked at deli meats? Like it's this big tube of something like kind of pinkish. What is it?
It's ham or turkey.
You sort of. Sometimes it's more than just ham.
Well, no, they say
But
it's ham or turkey.
all I'm saying is that we process foods into all kinds of different ways, and I don't think it's trying necessarily to get back at like, oh, I need to get at meat and this is a way to substitute it. I think it's more that you can make vegetables and vegetable type products into all kinds of things. And I think that's whereas people used to just think, oh, vegetables are just vegetables, and meat gets into all these other weird forms and shapes. But a lot of those
It seems like
burgers they're actually good. Sometimes I eat this one nut
but
burger.
real burgers are better. It's like vaping
Honestly,
versus smoking.
They're not necessarily like there's sometimes there's this nut burger that comes from your hometown Wakefield.
Don't
Arena
try and
Rutherford.
sway me with references to my hometown.
Well, it's just where it happens.
Uh-oh.
It's just where it happens to come from. But it's made out of mostly nuts and I think lentils. And when I ate it, I was like, wow, this is like actually really good. I was shocked at how good it was. And sometimes I don't want a hamburger. I'll just be like, man, I want a nut burger because it's actually very flavorful. And it's some nights I would much rather have that than a burger. And because it's a bit different, but it's equally good. Whereas I think that used to be that a lot of that, meat substitute stuff or other shaped were disgusting, and there still are some like that. But now some of them are pretty good. I think that a lot of them legitimately compete in tastiness to a lot of the meat stuff.
And good God, if you've ever had no-name frozen burgers from the grocery store, you realize that there are lows that meat can achieve you never dreamt possible in terms of flavor.
Oh God, yeah, there's bad meat out there.
Yeah.
Ron Swanson would beg to disagree.
It's spam? What is spam?
I don't know.
I think that's the thing with spam,
Army meat?
is that you don't know.
Ham. Sort
All
of.
right, well,
But see, you're going with the low-hanging fruit here. I could pick like some shitty vegetable that nobody likes, like Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, but
I'd rather have spam than Brussels sprouts.
I do think that
I'd rather have a Saslov's burger than your nut burger.
Yeah, like very good quality meat, but I pretty much always take a vegetable, like question mark vegetable thing than the question mark meat thing. I've had some meat that has been really disgusting, but usually if you know that thing is vegetable based, it's like, well, it's gross, but whatever. It's a bunch of vegetables.
I think the point that Crofton's making, that meat stuff tastes awesome. I mean, I agree with it, but then I also kind of feel like the vector that you're doing this on is protest. So you're not saying meat tastes bad, I'm going to be vegetarian. You're saying, the mistreatment of like, yes, it tastes good, but I'm still not going to eat it because this is what self-sacrifice looks like. That's kind of my, I'm sure a lot of vegans would agree that sure it tastes good, but you won't catch me eating that.
Well, and look, we're getting so
Yeah.
trapped
Yeah.
up in meat eating, but there's also a lot of really specific. There are facts associated with being vegetarianism, which are like meat eating is well more impactful on the earth. If everyone was a vegetarian or vegan, we would have much less impact on the planet. And now when we're always talking about environmental degradation, it's a valid point, and it's they always say like we in the West eat a lot of meat. If everyone ate as much meat as we did in other parts of the world, the world couldn't sustain that much meat agriculture to feed all those people. But those people, a lot of people, places in the world, people eat just rice and other vegetable, very little meat.
Well, I've heard about a lot of people like Andrea who want to be vegetarian, but then end up like being deficient in something or other, and then requiring to eat meat. So, like, if the whole planet was vegetarian, and you used the term omnivore before, which is true in that we eat everything. But really, and Bo was more on the carnivore side, but meat has been a major part of our diet forever. I'm just wondering if, like, would people, if the whole planet skipped meat and tried to eat a balanced vegetarian diet, would 20% of us become super ill and require intensive medical attention?
Well, it's interesting. I think it depends a lot on. In the current society we have, like, I think people could be vegetarians and remain very healthy. I think you need to make an effort to do it, but it's certainly possible. But here's an interesting point, sort of in support of what you're saying, Crofton, and I think the omnivore thing and about humans being opportunistic in what they'll eat is part of why we're successful. It's kind of like, oh, I'll eat that animal if I can get it. And I can't get an animal, I guess I'll eat these nuts or greens or whatever. But the one thing I want to mention was that I read this thing recently about sort of anthropology and studying genes. So when you dig up bones in various places of the world from, thousands of years ago, you can sequence their DNA now that we've unlocked that and see what genes are present. And I had read this thing about the gene that allows us to metabolize milk beyond infancy, and that was there was a specific time when that happened, and they can see when it came into Europe, so from somewhere like in the kind of the sort of Eurasian steppes or whatever, it came into Europe through there, and then they can see that very quickly that gene spread all over Europe. So what that says is it was advantageous to be able to drink milk. So advantageous that very quickly everyone in Europe had that gene, which means they outbred and were more successful than the people who couldn't process milk in that way. So just that dependency on animals has played vital roles at points in our evolution. So say, would we be where we are if we didn't eat meat or use animal products like milk? And I feel like maybe we wouldn't be, but we're not in that place anymore. So maybe we could still get by on like vegetarian diet today, but I think maybe we wouldn't got quite where we were if we weren't as opportunistic and about killing as we have been.
Yeah, killing's big business, and we've got it down to like a pretty precise science, I think. So
sort of.
Well,
Mike, I'll give you $5 to kill Bo right now.
What did I do?
It did occur to me.
For the record, I would never kill you myself. I want you to know that. I'll make it 10 Hodgins.
That sounded like a compliment, but it's insulting, right? It's accomplissalt.
All joking aside, imagine that your job was the person in the slaughterhouse that had to kill, like I think they use a bolt gun to kill cows, and that's all you did all day was just kill cows. Man, I wonder if you'd have PTSD.
I don't
know. Or it would just become routine.
I think you get used to it, but
or you'd have to have a very different worldview. Like, people look at the world very differently, and sometimes it's very stunning, just how, just the lack of empathy or the lack of certain things you'd come to expect from a human being are not present in some human beings. So.
Mike, I'll make it $50 if you just end it now.
I'm not into violence like that, Crofton. You have to do your own dirty work.
All right, it's time to end that nonsense.
Oh no, it's too late. I rescind the offer. He's about to deliver his verdict.
The animals are coming.
I said. Order in the court.
All right, now it's that time in the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast where we do verdicts, and I'm going to jump in first because, Mike, you've had the podium for quite a bit, and
Yeah, I am on this one. Sorry.
It's fine. You know what? I love listening to you talk, so it's all good.
That makes one of us.
Man, Crofton's like getting aggressive.
And I'm your number one friend, Crofton. What does it say about your other friends?
Oh, busted. All right. So I just wanted to, this could be a quick verdict. I definitely can understand why someone would make the decision to be vegan or vegetarian. Like Mike, I've seen a lot of those videos, and I get disgusted with myself that I will gladly go out and purchase the products that said practices will, result in. But I find myself, I don't know, I guess an epic level of lazy and privileged and still sort of engage in these things. So that's not reconciled with me yet. The one aspect of the living thing argument is, and maybe Mike, you can talk a little bit about it in your verdict, is that like vegetables are living things too, but maybe because they don't have feelings, it's okay. Which I kind of get, but on some logical level, I'm kind of like, well, we're still eating living things. We don't eat rocks yet, so certainly no one's going to be anti-vegetables and anti-meat. But, I think that it's very commendable that people look at these things and take a stand for it. And it takes a certain amount of bravery that I don't have. So I respect it. And, I find myself, as we talk about this, we're out there in the public. I was like, man, I'm kind of ashamed. Maybe there's something more I should be doing to make a stand about this kind of thing. So it's something I'm going to think about. Overall, my verdict on the subject of veganism and vegetarianism is good.
All right, I'll go next. It's one of those things where I actually don't like that these two things are lumped together. I'm a little more critical of veganism than I am vegetarianism. I think that vegetarianism is the more common thing, and I think after debating throughout the latter half of the show with myself about which way I'm going to go with this, I'm just going to go with the fact that I'm more pro-vegetarianism than I am anti-veganism. The thing with vegetarianism is I'm pro-meat. I like meat. I like eating it. And when you get into these conversations about something like this, you automatically get on a defensive, and I think this is how vegetarians are treated often. Like people are like, I made a comment about pushy vegetarians, but there's tons of people who are like, why don't you eat meat? What's wrong with you? What's the deal? I don't drink alcohol, and I get that all the time, and it drives me nuts. And so I agree with what Mike was saying about it being a brave thing. And while I don't agree with every individual reason for being a vegetarian, I do think that as a whole, it is no more a bad thing than eating meat is a bad thing, and might be a better thing depending on your argument. So there's no way I can really say that it's anything except good. So good is my vote.
I was kind of surprised you went with good on that one, Crofton. I'm kind of curious to hear what your issues are with vegans, but the time has passed for that. I'm going to agree with you guys and say veganism, vegetarianism is good. Just get it right out of there. I really appreciate that people will take an ethical stand and willingly do without what the lazier variety of us, like ourselves, would be like, I like meat, I'm going to keep eating it. I do think it's good for the environment to be vegetarian or a vegan, and there's an aspect of that. And again, I really do, in some ways, I wish I had more like moral fortitude and could be like, but I'd rather eventually, I always think, I've mentioned it before on the show, when society breaks down, and if it ever does, and you had to kind of scrape a living together, if I could get I don't know, some pigs and get them breeding and had to kill one a couple times a year to eat it, I would do that. So, and I think a lot of other people would too. So that's just where I fall on the thing. I think I'm willing to do the animal murder if I have to, but in the meantime, we'll just pay a little more for meat that is happier meat.
And yet Bo lives on.
bull lives on.
Man, I'm getting needled.
I'm sorry, number 7. So that was a good one. A little back and forth for 3 uniform good verdicts. We managed to get a little bit of back and forth going there. I thought that was pretty interesting. So we're just going to wrap up the show with some housekeeping. If you like this episode and you want to find more episodes, you can visit our website, which is goodbadbull.com. There you can find all sorts of info about the site, about the show. You can, and we would love it if you subscribe to the show. We're on iTunes. You can also find us through the Stitcher, and you can follow us on Twitter. We would love that, at goodbadbull. Find out when new episodes drop right away. You can, if you have any thoughts on this or any other topic, you can email us directly. We would love to read your email on air. Goodbadbull@gmail.com, unless of course you don't want it read on air. Maybe you just want to insult one of us, Bo, in which case that's fine too. And of course you can like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Good Bad Bull. So gentlemen, if our fair listeners want to follow you guys individually, let's start in chronological order with number 1. Number 1, where can people find you on the internet? That's Mike.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for that. I don't actually respond to a number. On the internet, yeah, I don't know. I don't like Twitter. Fuck Twitter. Hey, I use a swear word. There you go. I save it for when I want it.
I don't respond to a number.
Nor do I respond to your tweets. So don't tweet me. How's that for a response?
Sounds like your radio voice. Okay, number 7. That's Bo Schwartz. If people want to follow you on Twitter, are you going to tell them to F themselves as well?
No, when they follow me on Twitter, they can join me as I live tweet sneaking into Crofton's house and placing shrimp all up in his sheets in bed so that when he goes to sleep, he'll be in for a nasty surprise. And you can find that all at Bo Schwartz.
You better hope I'm not allergic or you'll be in for a nasty surprise. Called attempted murder. So,
are you allergic? I need to know before I do this.
And you can follow me at Crofton Steers on Twitter. All right, gentlemen. No, I'm not allergic to any seafood. I just don't like seafood. And honestly, I'm sure a large part of it is just the grossness, that I mentioned earlier.
You just haven't eaten the right seafood.
No, I don't think that's it. I've eaten a lot of.
I know it's true.
Sushi is so good.
There's some seafood
Sushi
I
is
know that if I could convince you to eat it, if I could get you to eat it without you knowing it's seafood, you'd be like, oh, that's good.
You know what's really good?
I know this to be true.
Shark is tasty.
See, I would not. I have a principled approach with regards to shark. I believe in some level of karma. I would, if ever I fall off a boat and there are sharks swimming around me, I don't want to be one of those douchebags wearing a shark necklace with the tooth being like, hey, don't eat me, man. I want to say, look, dude, shark, I've done nothing to you. I don't eat creatures from your kingdom. I don't eat you. If you eat me, you're going to have really bad karma. Same reason I don't eat bears.
And then you're going to throw me under the bus because I'll have fallen off the boat too. And you'd be like, eat that guy. He eats shark.
He loves
He eats
shark.
your family.
I hope that Crofton somehow gets trampled by a cow so that this karma thing after he gets trampled, all our legs and arms are broken. He's like, well, I guess I had that coming. I've eaten a lot.
I would have that coming. But see, I would fight a cow. Like a cow or a pig I would take on, but
dude, if a bull wanted to fight you, would win.
I wouldn't eat bull. I try to avoid it. If I knew it was a bull, I wouldn't eat it.
You don't know what it is. You're probably eating bulls all the time.
Oh no, they don't do that to bulls.
Yes, they do. Yeah, you kill them and eat them?
No, they're for breeding.
Dude, it's not just female cows that you eat.
Oh, well, whatever. Maybe I'd fight a bull, but an old...
No, Well, you fight. By fight, you mean run and then get killed.
I'd laugh if your information just now actually created a newfound worry for Crofton, where before he was living in innocence, and now he's actually worried about the carnivorous karma circle of life with bulls.
Yeah, like he goes out to visit Jesse's dad, and like one of the cows looks at him with its blank stare, and he's like starts sweating. He's like, "Oh God!"
he listened to my podcast.
It's just like chewing cud, staring blankly, and Crofton's like, "I gotta get in the house."
Well, it's, I've always looked at the animal kingdom and been like, you I'm scared of, you I'm not, you I'm scared of, you I'm not. So I eat the ones I'm not scared of. It's a principled stand.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
I don't respect your principles.
You know what?